Hello everybody, my name is Figsy People. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel if you're new. And today we're going to continue What If. But first, by now you've realized it, I'm almost at 100 subscribers and I'd really like if you subscribe. But that's up to you, so just watch my video. That works too. Anyways, let's get into the What If. So we continue our What If. After Deku has just won the UA Sports Festival, and since both Baku and Deku were unconscious, they got their medals after the sports festival. So, after Deku wakes up from his, unconsciousness, his mom's sitting next to him, tending to him. And when Deku gets up, he smiles at his mom, knowing he won before he went unconscious, with her smiling back because her son won. And yeah. And then Deku gets some information on Ida's brother, Ingenium, and how his legs don't work anymore and he can't be a pro hero anymore. And he thinks that's pretty depressing, actually. And yeah, he feels bad, but there's not much he can do. But yeah. Then when the internships come in, like people wanting to be your coach, I think Deku would get thinking, because like not a lot of heroes have electric abilities, so, and Deku's already too good, so some of them would think they couldn't really teach him anything. Honestly, I think Aizawa would ask if he wanted to be a part of this thing, because Deku seems like the type that would be stealthy in an actual stealth situation, or he needs to learn how to be stealthy. Either or, it doesn't matter. So Deku goes to Aizawa's agency, which is just his house. And so he enters with a boatload of cats swarming him and wanting to be picked up or petted. But Aizawa does a whole cat piss piss thing, and they all come back over to him. And they all then he points them into a direction, and then they go to their little houses and beds. Then Aizawa explains that Deku is too flashy and needs to learn some, some stealth moves. And so Deku tries to ask Aizawa how he's going to learn that. And Aizawa says that they're going to go on nightly patrols and catch some villains that lurk in the night, not in the day, like where most pro heroes are. But for now, he's gonna help Deku learn other stuff from school, just some later assignments. Some assignments that they're gonna learn later, but he's gonna learn them earlier so he can get a jump on them. So Deku just the whole day pets cats and learns about new stuff from Aizawa. Then, when the night comes, they go out, and Deku's hero outfit is kind of flashy, so Aizawa gives him a spare jumpsuit that he has. It fits kind of well. He has to roll up some sleeves, of course. And Deku then Deku realizes that Aizawa has a hoodie on the back of this thing. Aizawa said that was his earlier design before he came up with this one. That was one before he had hair. So Deku and Aizawa run, Aizawa shows Deku the stealthy moves that he uses, and they go to stop a villain. Which, let's say it's a group of thugs with some pretty strong quirks, like muscle quirks. With Aizawa asking Deku how he would handle this. With Deku saying probably sneak up on the bigger one? No, Aizawa says in a blunt voice. You go for the smallest one. And Deku says, why? To frighten the second strongest one. Then you go for the strongest one, then the second strongest. And then Deku says, that kind of makes sense. And Aizawa says, why? The little one is the weakest, so the second strongest one thinks they're fine. Then the biggest one goes down, and then it shocks him and scares him. And Aizawa says, correct. And then Aizawa snaps off a smoke grenade, clicks it down, and both Deku and Aizawa jump down. With Deku taking out the smallest one, making them go unconscious with his taser stuff. Aizawa takes out the biggest one, and then they both collaboratively punch him in the head. It's basically like a fist bump, but there's a head in between. And that guy goes unconscious, and then they pick up the guy who was being robbed. So they bring him out to the area and say to just go home. But the guy is saying thank you, and he appreciates the help. And then he leaves, thanking Aizawa and the kid. He guesses. And Aizawa says that that's really what we're going to learn today. Midoriya. And Deku says that he hopes he gets to learn a lot. Then the whole agency thing happens, and then Aizawa and Deku get a call that Ida has also been hospitalized and is missing an arm. Actually missing two arms. But luckily Todoroki showed up and overpowered Stain to make him run away. But now Ida is an amputee. Luckily for Ida, though, they're prosthetics for him, so now he has robotic arms. Of course, they don't work as good as his original arms, but they work. They can still pick up stuff. And then they hear Stain has been captured by Endeavor, because Stain tried to go for Endeavor like a week later and lost. Then Deku goes home and meets back up with his mother and talks about what Aizawa taught him. So, yeah. And tells her that Ida lost both of his arms, with Inko asking how, and he says that the hero killer Stain got to him. And then they have a conversation on how the hero Stainer is evil. And the next arc is the forest arc. So, just Deku gets there, Aizawa announces it, and they go. No dramatic thing. So Deku sits on the bus next to Bakugo, Ochako on the other seat, and they chat until they come to a abrupt stop. Then they exit and see Aizawa standing outside the door, saying that this is one of the heroes that is going to be teaching them. With her saying that they're going to learn how to survive in the wild and in dire situations. And then she taps her foot on the ground and destroys the entire the cliff. And then makes everyone tumble, and Deku dashes to the ground, tumbling. And then Deku looks up and sees the rock monsters, and just immediately Deku sends out a dragon to bite its head off and tear its head off. Then Bakugo shows up to blow up one that was about to touch Deku. And then Ochako lifts one into the air, and Ida smashes it with his legs. And Ida likes to fight without his arms, because he feels like it's better without them. So they fight through the rock monsters, get to the camp in the exact same time they got in the original. And Aizawa says you're late, with them saying they had to fight a bunch of rock monsters, but Aizawa says rock monsters. Just rock monsters. Exactly. He's like embarrassed that his students got defeated by rock monsters. Yeah. Then Deku sees Koda just sitting there, and he walks up to him, puts his hand out, gets hit in the balls, and then Ida shows up again to tell the kid where your manners, and catches Deku with his bionic arm that he accidentally left on the bus. And then he lifts his up, and Koda says he wants nothing to do with heroes. With Deku recovering from getting hit in the balls, saying, really? And then Koda leaves, not wanting to hear Deku. So then the UA looks over to see Class 1B, looking perfectly fine and not on the bus, and still on the bus, with them being irritated at Aizawa, but getting used to it, considering Aizawa is used to this. I mean, they're used to Aizawa doing this. Anyways, they have a bit of rest, and then they train. Deku is, again, training his electric power manipulation, and them saying that Deku needs to learn more than just a dragon. And so Deku learns how to make a giant, a ginormous spear. And he can split them off into multiple spears, or just shoot like up a load of other spears. Yeah, he still has his bow and arrow, but, you know, multiple spears compared to one arrow, a bit more overpowered, I'd say. So, yeah. Then after that day, they, of course, train some more. Then the next day, they make the curry, and Deku realizes there's no Koda anywhere. So he grabs a bowl of curry, and then walks to find Koda. So when he sees the kid on the cliff, he teleports, actually flies up there, because remember, Deku can fly now. And then he puts his foot onto the edge and basically walks up on Koda like Superman. And Koda says to leave him alone, but Deku is planning to, and he puts the curry down and is about to leave when he senses something, tackles Koda, Koda being annoyed at first, but then looking behind him to see a giant fist slamming into the bowl of curry, and vice versa, the cliff. Then it's revealed to be Muscular. Muscular says he's going to kill that kid like he killed his parents, because he can tell by the hair, the hat, and the eyes. And then Deku says that's not going to happen, with Muscular then saying that, you're the one we need to get rid of, with Deku saying, Big Boss said you need to die. Which is Shigaraki. He's referring to Shigaraki, because, you know, Deku helped in almost killing the Nomu and electrocuting his brain. So Deku says to come and try. So Muscular beefs up with his muscles and says, sure. Then he goes to slam onto the ground, but Deku dodges it, shooting a dragon to push Muscular back, but he just grabs the dragon with his bare hands and just snaps its neck. Well, its electric neck. It disperses, and then Deku flies up and then shoots his bow and arrow. It's thundering. So 2 shots into Muscular's shoulders, and then sending one through his heart, which actually makes his heartbeat speed up a lot quicker, so he gets tired quicker. So Muscular powers down slightly, removing some muscle, but he adrenaline hits him, and then he gets bigger and punches Deku in the gut. And luckily for Deku, there was a big dragon head blocking the punch. But it does send him into a wall and slam against it, hurting his back, but, he's gonna have to take it. So he lands on his legs, buckling, but gets up, with him seeing that Muscular's already on him, about to punch him with two fists, basically leaping at Deku with two fists pushing forward. But Deku, remembering his technique, sends out a giant spear, stabbing Muscular in the rib. And then that sends the Master Spear into the air, actually extending it to the point where every single person can see it. And then he brings it down off the cliff onto the ground, slamming it into the ground. Then he pulls it back like a goddamn pit, like a piggler, then slams it back down, and it blows up into a giant electric field. Which actually blows the leaves back and everything. And Muscular isn't dead, he's just entirely unconscious. Luckily for him, his muscles are keeping him alive by holding the bleeding wound shut. And then Deku picks up Koda and zooms over to Aizawa, knowing where he is, putting Koda next to him, and then Deku says he's going to find his classmates. Then Deku zooms around by thunderclapping, flashing, and dashing, meeting a clone of Dabi that was just about to go fight Aizawa, but Deku punches its head off with one punch. By, he was going really fast, so he punched its head off real quick. Not meaning to do that, but then realizing it's goop and it falls apart, he takes a sigh of relief. Thinking it's someone else's quirk of cloning or something. And then Deku meets up with Bakugo, who's about to get kidnapped by Compress, but Deku shows up to break Compress's hand by actually breaking off the bone and making it bend down. So Compress yells in pain, but he uses his other hand to kidnap Bakugo. But of course Deku's not going to let that happen, so he uses one of his dragons to grab Compress before he can fly away, slamming him into the ground, grabbing the marble, and getting out of there. But Dabi has another word to say about that, shooting a fireball at Deku, but Deku dodges it again, trying to do a kick, realizing this is the real deal. Going for a kick, Dabi then fires another fire blast, basically contorting the other fire blast. But Deku again, thunderclap and flashes upwards, and then Thunder does a shockwave, which actually makes Dabi take a knee in pain. Then Twice shows up to send out more Dabi clones, because that's the only person's height he knows. And then those Dabi clones set out a legion of fire. But Deku then encases himself in a dragon. It's disintegrating a lot faster than it did in the sports festival, but Deku doesn't need it to hold, needs it to get him out of the fire. So Deku gets out of the fire, jumping out of it. Some of his clothes being slightly burnt, because he jumped out of it a bit too early. But then Deku double kicks, drop kicks, Twice's face, knocking him out. And then he spews out, then he gets teleported by Koryuri back to the lair, and we see him slam onto the bar table and fall behind the table. And Dabi gets annoyed, sending out a bigger fire blast so Deku can't dodge it, having to face it full on and can't, get out of it. So Deku has to take this fire head on, And yeah, it's burning like a lot, and it's actually making his skin bubble and burn. And then Deku, pushing through the fire in a whole lot of pain, dashes to grab Dabi's hand, pulling him, Dabi over, and then socking him in the chest, and then sending out a giant dragon fist to grab Dabi and then slam him into the ground, knocking him unconscious, barely. And then Korigiri teleports him also slamming onto the desk, but falling forward instead of backwards. And also compress after being knocked out from shock after his arm breaking. He also gets teleported, leaving only Twice, Spinner, and Magneto. And then they're notified where he is, so they run over to him. Luckily for them, they're able to do this. So Toga goes for a stab, but Deku dodges it, catching the knife and kneeing Toga in the snout, breaking her nose, but she doesn't care, of course, because it's Toga. She grabs a second one of her stabby things to suck blood from, and stabbing Deku in the leg, actually sucking some blood out, which makes Deku gag. But he grabs the thing that's sucking the blood's tube, tears it in half with like his electric powers, then blinds Toga with the blood. Then he tears the tube out and stabs it into Toga's leg. Then punches her across the face, knocking her out. Remember, Deku's punching these guys like really fast with electric punches. That's why they're getting knocked out really quickly. I forgot to mention, Deku wears rings, electric rings, so he can use his electric powers more effectively without his hero outfit. So that's why he's able to knock out the League of Villains with a couple hits. So Toga's out and then gets teleported with Korigiri in disgust of how the state she's in. Her leg stabbed, blood on her face, and missing her knife. Then Spinner and the Magni lady showed up. And Deku, being really tired right now, is run off of fumes right now. If you're wondering where everyone else is, let's say Baku in this timeline didn't team up with Todoroki, he just went by himself because they didn't want to go at him. So it took Todoroki forever to find Baku, but of course in this timeline he doesn't find him, and so Deku is just holding his marble in his right hand. And so Deku then sends out all the energy he got into one pulse, which knocks out Spinner, but doesn't knock out the magnet lady because she uses her magnet to absorb the lightning. And then she's able to knock Deku out with one big wallop to the head. And Magnet grabs the marble, goes to the portal in a haste. With Deku being unconscious, luckily for him, before Shigaraki put his hand through the portal, Todoroki shows up to shoot the fire at the portal, keeping Deku from dying. So Deku is unconscious and dragged to the hospital because he is on fire, has a stab wound, has a sprained back, and is extremely exhausted. So Deku goes to the hospital and, fix up his leg, and Deku, waking up in a shock, immediately to tell everyone that he's going to go get Bakugo, and Momo says that she got a tracker on the Nomu, and Deku says, could he borrow it? But she says that she would like to go. Then Kirishima, then Ida, then Ochako, all volunteer to go. So they go, and they get there, and of course they're about to go save Bakugo, but the heroes are already there, bursting through the doors, and the same thing that happens in the original happens there. But when All Might, yeah, so All Might goes to grab Bakugo, but he teleports, and then All for One blows up the building. And I'll say, Deku, instead of being frightened, he feels anger because this guy took his friend away. So Deku shoots himself, thunderclap and flashing and flying at the same time, towards All for One while he's doing his speech about All for One being, All Might being weak and old. And Deku then slams into All for One being shocked because no one steps up to him like this. And then shooting a buttload of electric punches into him, grabbing his face as well, and shooting a gargantuan electric current through his head. But of course he regenerates it, grabs Deku by the leg, and throws him down. Then trying to shoot him with his tendrils. But Deku sends out a dragon to catch all of those, and they all shatter on the dragon, dispersing the dragon too. Then Deku lands on his legs and tells All for One, "This is for my friend." And All for One says that he's gonna die here, just like All Might is. With All Might telling young Midoriya to get the heck out of here. But Deku says that this guy hurt Bakugo, and he's not gonna let that slide. With the crowd that is watching this cheering for Deku, hoping he doesn't die. And that line was pretty cool. So Deku then powers up, and lightning starts sparking off of him, and the lightning sometimes turns blue. And then he opens his eyes again with it being lightning blue instead of yellow blue. And his hair also glows blue slightly, with some blue spikes slightly. Yeah, he's going Super Saiyan. I'm kidding. But yeah. He's powering up and then flies up into the air, and then All for One and Deku have clashes, like Dragon Ball. Yeah, more Dragon Ball references. And then Deku kicks All for One down, breaking some of his mask off. But he doesn't care, so he takes the whole thing off. Because he can still breathe without the mask. It's just harder. Then All for One shoots a gigantic blast at Deku, but Deku just counters it with his pulse, which envelops All for One's thing and actually scorches his arm. But Deku, underestimated All for One after that and got checked, and then got those tendril things shot through his stomach. But he actually grabs All for One, and then he pulses again, actually tearing All for One's arm off with the pulse, because the pulse makes a barrier, which cuts All for One's arm off. Then Deku tears it out and coughs out blood, because ouch. Then All for One interferes, tackling. Then All Might interferes, tackling All for One and starting beating his head in. But, of course, like in the original, All for One punches off All Might, and he starts to weaken himself and gets into a skinny form. With Deku being shocked and recovering from the bleed at the holes, he then, seeing this, focuses his energy into his palms and burns the hole close. Deku's still coughing out a buttload of blood after that. He clings it up, and then he sends out his giant electric, pushing himself back into that electric blue state. He flies up and then makes 5 separate gargantuan pillars. Then he sends out 2 of them, which All for One deflects one, gets hit by another into the chest. And then Deku sends all of the rest of them, and then those hitting like missiles instead of spears. So they blow up All for One, with him losing his entire suit. Yeah, I don't think his suit's surviving all of that explosion. And luckily for us, he does not have a wee-wee. So he destroys it, pulls out the spear, and then throws it at Deku. But Deku, of course, being the one that made it, just absorbs back into his body. Then Deku dashes and punches All for One, twirling him into the air. With how many punches he's doing, he's basically Sonicking him by hitting him like a ball Then Deku puts his fist through All for One, then puts his hand on his head again, actually pushing his hand through his body, touching the back of his head, and then putting his other hand on the front of his face, and then shooting a lot of, like, most of his energy into All for One's brain, almost mushing it, and actually he does mush it, and then his nose All for One's nose, non-existent nose, actually bleeds. By, the place where his nose used to be bleeds, and his body he gushes out a lot of blood. And then Deku pulses, he pulses, then tears his arm out, then dives into the ground, because they're actually pretty high up right now, then just spam pulses All for One, which actually starts to disintegrate his body. Then Deku just slams into the ground, does a dragon fist by pulling his fist up and slamming it on the ground, then it exploding, sounding like a dragon roar. Then Deku pulls another one back and just starts punching All for One, with all of them sounding like roars. And then Deku pulls back 2 fists, punching All for One in the chest, that making a pulse/dragon roar, which then we see that All for One has been turned to straight up atoms. Then Deku pulls his fist out, cleaning them off. Then he just falls over unconscious. But All for One reforms, because we've seen him survive off ashes. And before he can do anything, All for One, All Might shows up with his fully charged punch to knock All for One straight out. Then Deku goes to the hospital, revered as a hero for saving All Might. In their eyes, they say that he saved them, because he gave him enough time to hit that final blow. Then he gets like a buttload of flowers, candies, and chocolates for saving All Might. Deku grins with happiness after waking up, with Inko showing up with her pain medicine in her hand, because she's almost had a heart attack when she saw this on the news. But she was able to find all the medicine in the back of her cabinet and save herself from dying. So then Deku climbs out of bed with the wound still attached to him, and hugs his mom and cries aggressively and says he's sorry that he did that. They're saying she's just glad he's alive. And then they both have a really, really, really good cry. And yeah, that's going to leave things right now. Hope you like the video. Like, subscribe, hit the post notification bells. I will see all of y'all later.